Nobody's heard from Kenya. That's when I went into high alert.
The first 48 hours is the most crucial. If this girl is alive, we need to find her.
I hadn't heard from my sister. We talked all day, every day. I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do.
She was this young, beautiful girl who just went out for a drink.
Travis Forbes is the last person to see her.
There was a guy, a man that was walking by. His first name was Dan.
We have this mysterious Dan. Maybe she just went home with this guy.
I didn't think she was gonna disappear.
They see Kenya come into the building with a guy.
Something's not right here.
I see him walking in to the office wearing rubber gloves and the video going blank.
All the bells went off.
I had a 9mm handgun. I stuck it in the back of my waistband. I was doing what any dad would do.
Where can she be?
At that exact moment, my life changed forever.
On April 1st, 2011, I got a call from my wife, Maria, and she's telling me nobody's heard from Kenya. I asked, has her sister Kim heard from her today? I knew that they talked morning, noon, and night.
It was a Thursday night. Kenya went out with a group of girls that we went to high school with, but she did not come home that night. On Friday, her friends reached out to me and let me know that they still had all of her belongings, like her purse, her car keys, her phone. That's when I kind of started getting a little bit more worried, so I immediately called my dad.
The fact that Kimberly had not heard from her at all was everything to me. That's when I went into high alert. I think I better file a missing person report.
When we got the missing persons report from Tony Lee, he tells us that according to her friends, Kenya went out the night before to the lower downtown area, and she's dancing with the guy, intoxicated. The guy is intoxicated. The bouncers say, sorry, you guys can't be here anymore, and they kick her out. And she leaves her purse, cell phone, everything with her friends. They wait till the bar closes. They can't find her, so they think maybe she just went home with this guy. Missing persons tells Tony they have to wait a few days because Kenya is 19 years old. She's an adult. If she doesn't want to be found, she don't have to be found.
That bothered me. That bothered me to no end.
Kenya wasn't the type of person that wouldn't let people know where she was at or what she was doing. She was so responsible. Even though me and Kenya were 4 years apart, we were super close. We never hid anything from each other. We were inseparable. My mom was born and raised in Honduras. At a young age, she had her first child, which was Kenya, and she decided to move to America. She actually had to leave Kenya behind with my abuelita. Once my mom moved to America, she met my dad, and ever since then, they fought pretty hard to get Kenya over to America.
Kenya finally got into Denver in 2004. She was 12 years old. She just looked up at me, and she had this thing that she had to look up at me like that because she was so short, and she said, "Thank you, Daddy."
Kenya always knew that my dad would be there for her for anything that she needed. She never felt like she was the stepchild or anything like that.
It was just like, yeah, this is right. You're my daughter, and I'm your dad. That Friday night, I got Kenya's phone from her friends, and I see that the last message on her phone said, "Hey, this is Travis. Did you make it to your car okay?" And so I'm thinking, this is possibly the last person to see her. Maybe he knows something.
My mom or I didn't know who that was, so we were like, okay, let's figure out who this is.
So I called, and I called all through that night. I must have called Travis 25 times. I left 25 messages. Travis finally called me back approximately 8:30 on the night of April 2nd. I told him, my daughter, we haven't seen her, so I'm trying to get a sense as to what happened. He told me this story about how he first came in contact with Kenya. He was dropping his friend at his apartment downtown, and he saw this girl. She seemed to be extremely intoxicated. She can't find her keys, she can't find her phone, and she can't find her friends. He said, so I offered to take her home, and she agreed. And on the way, she pointed out there was a Conoco station over there. Let's go over there and buy me some cigarettes. They got there, and the Conoco was closed. This guy comes walking up. He's smoking, and she asked him if she could bum a cigarette. And they're sitting over there on the curb, smoking, and she told Travis, I'm just going to go with this guy. They just went walking away. I'm trying to process all this information. And this is when he just said, look, the Conoco station, this is where I last saw her. Why don't you meet me here? And I can, we can talk about this. And I says, I'm on my way. I had a 9mm handgun. As I'm walking out the door, I don't know why I did it, but I stuck it in the back of my waistband. I think I got that from Miami Vice or something. I was doing what any dad would do, trying to find my daughter. By the time I got to the Conoco station, there were 2 Denver police officers there.
When Tony left the house, fearing that something might happen or Tony may do something, his wife called 911. She said, my husband's going to go meet this individual at Conoco station. He's armed himself with a gun, and our daughter is missing. So Denver police responded to the Conoco to keep the peace and to start to gather information.
When I got to the Conoco station, the officers were talking to Travis. When I shook his hand, he was trembling so hard as if there was an earthquake. And I thought, something's not right here. At that point, I noticed Travis's van. Kenya wouldn't have gotten in a van that looked like that. I wouldn't have gotten in a van that looked like that.
The officer asked Travis, what's the deal with the van? And he said, I make gluten-free granola bars, and I have to deliver them to various stores.
Travis is very cooperative. He gave them voluntary consent to search his van, to look for any clues.
The front of the van was tools, clothes, food wrappers. The back of the van smelled like bleach, and new carpet is laid on the floor. It didn't sit right with the officers. The officers give him a request to appear, to go talk to the detectives at police headquarters. Tell me what happened Thursday night into Friday morning. Case is heightened up, and everybody's thinking something's up with this guy. They see Kenya come into the apartment building with a guy.
She was obviously upset.
This is who we need to be looking at.
I was relieved that we had him contained, but at the same time, we didn't have any physical evidence against him.
I told him that he was going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and we were going to find Kenya.
Kenya Monet was last seen April 1st in the lower downtown district of Denver.
The feeling in the house was really tense. Everyone was on edge. Nobody really knew what was going on. Nobody really knew how to think. My mom was kind of frantic, like wondering, where's my baby? Where's Kenya?
Right now, it was a missing person case because we didn't have a body. I worked the missing person side. Lou Estrada worked it on the homicide side, thinking that if we do find a body, we're covered on that end.
By his own admission, Travis Forbes, he's telling us he was one of the, if not the last person to see her when he dropped her off at a Conoco gas station 4 days ago.
Before I go into interview Travis, we pull a criminal history. We want a background on him to see what we're dealing with. We learned that he did some time in the Department of Corrections, so he was in prison. He's been investigated for theft, criminal trespass, burglaries, and we know he's on probation. We also learned that, he's running his business. And according to The person who owns that bakery, she said his business is booming. These gluten-free granola bars are flying off the shelves. So we're thinking, okay, well, maybe he's straightened out. We don't know yet. But this is somebody we need to talk to.
Travis, this is Detective Grueling. How's it going? It's Travis Ford.
Right now, he's a witness in the missing person case. Have no charges on him. He can stand up and say, I don't want to talk to you, and he can walk out that door. So at this point, we're trying to lock him into a story. This way we can verify all that information and see if he's lying or if he's telling the truth.
Tell me what happened Thursday night into Friday morning.
Eddie and me, we were working at the bakery. We went out to Opal, and we were there till close, eating sushi and whatnot, and then brought Eddie back and dropped him off at 15th in California. And as we were walking over to his building, that's when, we met Kenya. She was very upset. We could hear her crying and being emotional, obviously upset. So we intervened, and she didn't know where her car was. And she didn't know any of her friends' numbers.
While Detective Grueling was interviewing Travis, I'm in the tech room watching on a monitor. Part of monitoring that interview is to follow up with some of the stuff or the information they give during that interview.
As he would say things like, I was with Eddie, I was, here. People are running down those leads. They're going out and searching for surveillance video, calling his friends.
As the interview's going on, we were able to track down Eddie. He confirmed he was with Travis at the time he met Kenya, but he was not with Travis when Travis and Kenya went to the Conoco station.
You drop off Eddie, then what happens?
She asks me for a cigarette. I tell her I don't smoke. So driving eastbound, I saw a Conoco. Pull around, and the Conoco's closed. There was a guy, a man that was walking by. I didn't see him until she got out of the van.
Okay.
He was smoking a cigarette. She got out, she asked him for a cigarette, and asked him to sit and smoke with her.
Did you get a name?
Yeah, his first name was Dan.
Do you know Dan what?
No. He
Describe
said,
it to me.
not very big.
Okay. About how tall?
5'4" to 5'8". Not too much taller than her.
Okay. So,
He was skinny. He had a young face,
how old do you think he was?
mid-20s. He had dark blue jeans, like designer jeans. They were sagging,
What
gray,
was his hair?
black, short. He had a stud and a very round face.
Okay.
In my training and experience, it's been highly unusual to see someone give a description as he did. Everything he recalled, what Dan was wearing, the round face, the hair, how tall he was. His story seemed rehearsed.
So tell me about Kenya. She's cute.
Yeah, she was cute. I didn't get a really good look at her face. And even now, I can't really remember what she
How was
looked
she
like.
dressed?
Club style.
Dress, cut her heels.
I don't know.
Don't know?
No.
Okay.
It was odd. He could describe Dan in detail, but he couldn't describe Kenya, and he was with her for almost an hour. We don't know yet if he was involved in Kenya's disappearance, but that kind of sent up a red flag. However, I couldn't just focus on him. We needed to eliminate everybody else. We have this mysterious man, Dan. Maybe she just went home with this guy. We don't know yet, but this is somebody we need to talk to.
She immediately, attached herself to this guy. And she proceeds to cry about nothing goes right in her life. My perception was that she had just gotten into a fight with her boyfriend. That's what it seemed like to me. She kept going on about, why did he do this to me? Why does he treat me like this? And he broke her heart.
I break free from monitoring the interview and start to research her boyfriend. We find out she had recently broken up with a boyfriend she had been dating for some time.
We still have questions for Travis, but we also need to find Kenya's ex-boyfriend. We need to find Dan. We have people we need to look at, investigate, corroborate where they were, and start eliminating some of these people. We need to get moving on these. If this girl is alive, we need to find her.
Kenya Monet has been missing for approximately 4 days. No one has heard from her.
My perception was that she had just gotten into a fight with her boyfriend.
We didn't know what to believe with Travis yet. Something don't seem right. Maybe he was involved in something else that night that he doesn't want to talk about. But at this point, we don't have anything to show that he's lying. So we cut Travis loose and ask him to come back for a polygraph. We'll wait to see what happens.
After the interview, I had contacted Tony Lee. I wanted to talk to him in person to find out any more information he can give us about the boyfriend. I felt for Tony. Tony wanted answers I couldn't give him. I wanted to get those answers for him and his family.
Afterwards, I said, "Can I get one of your business cards?" And he reached, and it's like, "Oh, I don't have any." I thought that odd. I asked him, "Why have you not given me your business card?" And he said, "I'm homicide." I not once thought about maybe she's dead. That thought never even crossed my mind. There's this thing called hope. Hope is what gets you up in the morning. It keeps you going. Just having it is so very powerful. When I learned that they were actually looking at this as a possible homicide, it was overwhelming to me.
As the chief of the family violence unit, they contacted me to come over because they had a missing person case that had indication of some foul play. It was a pretty massive investigation. There were a lot of people that were involved. They were just flooding the streets with officers, finding surveillance everywhere that he thinks she may have been.
When they find the apartment building where Travis said that he picked her up, they look at surveillance video from there, and they see Kenya come in to the apartment building with a guy. They actually see her go up in the elevator. She gets off on a floor, and her and the guy walk into the apartment. Within 5 minutes, she walks out. She goes down to the lobby. Kenya's left her alone. Eventually, he was identified as Chad Davis, the guy she left the bar with.
When we interviewed him, he said he had left the bar with Kenya. They went to his apartment. Kenya was up there maybe 10 minutes. She realized at that point she had left all of her items with her friend. She had no cell phone, no wallet, no keys. And he took her back downstairs. It was at that point that Mr. Douglas went back upstairs to his apartment and never returned. We did see evidence of that on video. So he was eliminated as a person of interest or a suspect being involved in her disappearance. Around that time frame, we were able to contact the ex-boyfriend. He gave us a statement. His alibi panned out. So he was eliminated as well.
At this point, we're trying to find Dan, the person that Travis says Kenya walked away with at the Conoco station. We put out feelers everywhere. We ran all over looking for him. Everybody Kenya came in contact with or talked to or text messaged that night was talked to. Every person. But we couldn't find this mysterious man, Dan.
We're starting to believe that Dan never really existed. It was almost simultaneously that we were done crossing people off of our list when we received a call from Monica Poole, who was the owner of the bakery where Travis made his gluten-free bars. We had already spoke over the phone to confirm that Travis worked for her. She told us she was viewing her video cameras from over the weekend, and she noticed Travis walking in to the office wearing rubber gloves and the video going blank, indicating someone had turned it off. On the video in the back of the bakery where they prepped the food, you see Travis come in with a cooler, and it's duct taped. The seals are duct taped. It's on a cart. He's not carrying it. Miss Poole thought it was odd, and so did we. Why was the cooler, number one, wrapped up? And most importantly, why did it need to be into the walk-in cooler? His gluten-free bars didn't need to be in the walk-in cooler. We started to grow this hypothesis that Travis had done something to Kenya.
We need to talk to him about that video. We're waiting for Travis to come back and take a polygraph. He doesn't show up for his polygraph, and we don't know where he's at. He's not answering his phone, calling his friends, and his friends haven't talked to him. Right now, with Travis, he's a witness/suspect. We had nothing to tie him to her disappearance. It was all speculation. We were able to execute search warrants on his cell phone records.
We looked at the GPS data. We started to map out Travis's geolocations. Late afternoon on Friday, April 1st, Travis is at the bakery in southeast Denver. After that, you could start to see it move up to Keansburg, Colorado, in the middle of a field early Saturday morning. Knowing the information we have from the video from the bakery, we started to grow this hypothesis that she was in the cooler and he took her up to this northeastern Colorado area. We have to get up to Keansburg and look around there.
Everything that we had, everything that Travis did, I mean, everything led to the fact that she very likely had been killed.
Kenya goes missing April 1st. We're about 2 weeks into the investigation. We go to Kingsburg to look for her.
We suspected at this point now that Kenya's probably passed, and it is a homicide. But if we could just find the body of Kenya or her remains, we may at that point, with everything we developed, to have enough to arrest Travis for the murder.
We get together with a bloodhound team. We went to every dot where Travis's phone came up on that map and did like a 100-yard radius around it. But we can't find anything.
It was very disheartening. It kind of took the wind out of your sail for a while. Where can she be?
As days and weeks go by, I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. It's hard going from talking to someone all day, every day, to not hearing from them at all. It's just complete radio silence. And as a 15-year-old girl, I need my sister the most, and I don't have her. But I had this feeling in my heart that Kenya was still alive. I felt like that was our sister connection, and it was just telling me, you know what, Kenya's coming home. There's no way that she would leave me here alone.
Now we're like a month into the investigation, and I'm running parallel investigations trying to find her and find Travis. It seems like we're chasing him. He's popping up. We're always a couple steps behind.
He won't answer his phone. It goes straight to voicemail. But suddenly, there's Travis Forbes on TV.
You know, everybody has their own choices.
Travis is very animated, very theatrical.
I didn't think she was gonna disappear.
Got a lot of media attention, and I think it was because Tony and Maria were in the media a lot, but also because she was this young, beautiful girl who just went out for a drink, and, you know, there were so many people that could relate to that.
She chose to walk off with this guy, and I can't blame myself for that. God, I'm sorry. This has been really emotional for me.
Watching his narcissistic look at me kind of attitude, they just made you sick to your stomach. Here he was presenting as this good Samaritan and what a great guy he was, but he won't go back to the police department.
My goal was to get in front of him, but we still don't know where he's at. So we ran down all his friends, and we find his friend, and she says, I let him borrow my 4Runner.
He didn't have a car because we had his van. So he asked one of his friends if he could borrow her car for some time.
I asked her, did you get your 4Runner back? She said, no, I'm going to report it stolen. I said, you know what? I could send an officer out there to take a report right now. So she reports her car stolen. Later on that day, a cop in Austin, Texas, is going through the parking lot of a hotel running license plates. He runs the plate on the 4Runner, comes back stolen. And they arrested Travis. I'm excited. We finally knew exactly where he was and what he was doing. We had him contained. My lieutenant comes in and tells me, go home, pack a bag, you're leaving. Going down there to interview Travis. I wanted him to think I'm in his face every time he turns around, and I want him to know that. I'll do whatever I need to do to get the answers I want.
You guys took that into property.
How you doing, Travis? How you been?
I walked in and Travis lost the color in his face.
How long did it take you to get here?
Dude, I've been waiting for you. We started a conversation a month ago, we never got to finish.
Yeah. Well,
Kind of crazy.
yeah, crazy. Talking to the media was beautiful. That was
Dude, why did you do that?
That was dumb.
We had a lot to talk about that day, and you never came back. You were running like a guilty guy. You're on probation and you're on Texas.
Dude, after the media fiasco and after all the that I went through, and that week, that was a week of hell. That was the worst week of my life. This girl going missing to me over. My life got turned inside out.
He's trying to get sympathy from me. Oh, poor is me. He was all about himself.
He's very narcissistic. Nash going down there to talk to him is to make him feel important. Like, wow, you're here in Austin, Texas. You're from Denver, Colorado, and you came here to see me.
I went in there with a game plan that I'm going to talk to him and I want to get his DNA.
It's a warrant for your DNA. So, this fine gentleman here with forensics is going to take your DNA. Okay?
We wanted his DNA on file because we were running so many tests on so many different things. We wanted to make sure that we had his DNA to compare it to.
We were tearing apart the cooler. We had things from the van. We had things from the bakery. Every single thing we could possibly find, we were testing. During the search of the van, they found a hair in the back.
We knew that Kenya was in the van because he told us that she was in the van. But he said she was in the front of the van.
Did Kenya ever get in the back of that van?
No.
Not at any time whatsoever. How would you explain her hair in the back?
Maybe it came from the front to the back.
But there's a screen there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, there's holes.
But it has root.
It has roots.
Yeah.
This hair had a root, and that has to be pulled out, not just falling off. It has to be pulled out. So explain that to me.
I don't believe you. I'm sorry.
I guess what I expected was that Kenya came on to you and you guys did the nasty. And then the guy came over and she walked off, or she got out of the van and walked off. So be it. Shit happens. Not saying that and finding out later that you did, that's not going to look good.
Dude, none of this looks good. I'm in Texas. Look, I
So
think...
did she have sex with you?
Nash, I think at this point, my lawyer should be present.
Huh. Interesting. We're sitting here talking for 4 hours, and I said, well, did you have sex with her? And now he needs an attorney. I was relieved that we had him contained, but at the same time, we didn't have any physical evidence against him, and we didn't have a body. So we need to make sure we get him to talk to me. We just need to find her.
It's been a month and a half since Kenya's disappearance, and Travis was arrested in Austin, Texas. He's the #1 suspect.
We didn't have any evidence. So we need to make sure that we got a confession to solve this case. So I wanted him back in Colorado. The Jefferson County DA's office extradited Travis back to Colorado for the stolen car charge, and he was placed in the Jefferson County Jail.
Unfortunately, once Travis is extradited back to Colorado, the friend that had allowed Travis to use her car had a change of heart and dropped the charges. So Travis is released from Jefferson County. We knew we had a problem.
It was frustrating when they released him, but we still wanted to make sure that we knew where he was. So we actually put surveillance on him. We're hoping that he will visit her gravesite, but he doesn't do that. Instead, that surveillance followed him up to Fort Collins.
On July 4th, 2011, I was on foot patrol with the Fort Collins Police Department. That evening, we got a call for a welfare check. A citizen had observed somebody that they thought was in distress. When we first walked up, he was acting strangely, muttering to himself, and very suspicious, hunted animal look in his eye. And that ended up being Travis Forbes. He was certainly a strange guy. But as soon as they told him he wasn't in trouble, he was very friendly all of a sudden. Once it was clear that he hadn't committed a crime and that he seemed to be relatively okay, Fort Collins police went on their way about their foot patrol.
As they cut him loose, one of our undercover detectives walks up and says, "Hey, just to let you know, we have Travis under surveillance. We have a girl that disappeared. He's our person of interest." But that's the end of it. A few days later, we had to pull our surveillance. We can't watch him for the rest of the year. We don't have that kind of resources. On July 8th, I get a call from Fort Collins Police.
On July 4th, there had been an incident in which a woman, Lydia Tillman, had been attacked in her home, sexually assaulted, and beaten to the point where it was miraculous she was alive. The apartment had been washed down with bleach in an attempt to destroy DNA evidence. Because I knew that the Denver police had had an interest in Travis Forbes, suspecting him of a violent crime against a woman, combined with the unnerving observations I made about him, made me think that maybe that was the guy we should look at.
All the bells went off. We know Travis liked bleach. And the detective from Fort Collins says, "We have DNA in our case." And I said, "I have his DNA sitting in Property Bureau."
On the evening of July 11th, got a call around 11:30 at night. It is confirmed it's Travis Forbes' DNA underneath Lydia Tillman's fingernails. It was based on that information that Fort Collins found and arrested Travis Forbes.
I was ecstatic. Now I know for sure he's not getting out and he's not going anywhere. I head up to Fort Collins, go to Larimer County Jail. I laid my pocket recorder on the table, and Travis walks into the room.
How you been?
You've seen the charges that they have me here on.
At that point, we couldn't charge him in Kenya's case because we didn't have any DNA that could get us there.
We didn't have a body, and we didn't know what really happened, so we needed a confession.
When you saw me in Texas, there was a book that you told me that you had read. Start with an S. Can you tell me what that book was?
When I was there, I didn't think he was going to talk to me, but we started talking about books. We started talking about philosophy. Travis wanted to talk to a friend, so I do whatever I can to kind of build that rapport.
A year ago, I wasn't a person that was capable of these things.
You know, there's a saying that says, it's not what you say. It's what you do that defines you.
Nash, I would give anything to go back.
Travis, you're lying. You're not sincere about that.
Why? Why do you say that?
I have a mom who calls me every week, crying for her daughter. When someone is sincere about what they've done,
They confess.
yeah,
I talked to my lawyers, and my lawyers said that there's nothing for me to gain.
Talking to Travis, he was all about himself. So I knew I had to convince him, telling us what he did was in his best interest.
you can always ask for a lenient sentence. Tell me what you want, Travis, and I will take it to the DA. Tell me.
I want to go to prison without being labeled as a sex offender. Because if I go to prison as a sex offender,
There it is. Travis wants a deal. He wants to confess.
You'll cough it up. You'll confess to everything if you go to prison without being labeled a sex offender.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I want to confess. I want to confess so bad.
Chills run down my spine. I can't believe I just talked this guy into cutting the deal.
We had a meeting with Fort Collins, and we went back and forth quite a bit, negotiating with his lawyers. So the agreement was he would plead guilty to murdering Kenya. He also had to tell us where she was. He was going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and we were going to find Kenya.
We go up to Fort Collins, and we pick up Travis, and we load him into the truck. I said, okay, tell me where to go. And he says, go south on I-25, get off on a county road. We head over towards Kingburg.
The whole drive there, I thought, I just don't know. I don't know where he's taking us. This could be a big show. I mean, everything was about Travis. He was, thought he was so charming and important that I really wasn't sure if we were going on a wild goose chase or not.
And then he goes, oh, wait a minute, stop. I look at him through my rearview mirror, and then he says, right here by these grove of trees. I get out. I walk over there. I don't see anything. He said, move 3 steps to your right. I move 3 steps to my right, and he says, you're standing on top of it. Now we got a job to do. Let's do our job and start digging. As we're driving, Travis says, oh, wait a minute, stop. And then he says, it's right here by these grove of trees. We mark it with the flag. We call in the crime lab, tape off everything, and start digging.
We were there for quite a long time, and we were there for hours because it was so methodical and so careful. And there she was. It was heart-wrenching. I had built a relationship with Kenya's family, and so I called Tony from there.
Maria was asleep, and I sat down on the bed beside her, and she sat up and she just said, what's wrong? And I told her that I believe they had found Kenya. And she asked me, where, how is she doing? And I had to tell her that since she didn't make it, that Kenya was dead. That she lost it. And there was nothing I could do for her. Nothing. And then I had to tell Kim.
At that exact moment, my life changed forever. I would never be the same person without my sister. That part of me died along with Kenya. Thinking about her last moments, I always wonder, what was she thinking? How hard was she fighting back? I just always wonder, and it breaks my heart knowing that I wasn't there to protect my sister, because that's what sisters are supposed to do. They're supposed to protect one another.
We proceeded to take Travis back to the Fort Collins Police Department, where Nash and I conducted an interview.
That was part of the deal. You show us where she is, and then we'll interview you. And if he didn't, his deal was off. It was important to know what actually happened.
Travis, let's start from the beginning. Let's start March 31st into April 1st.
Well, everything is true about what I told you. We did drive to the Conoco to see if it had cigarettes, to see if it was open. It didn't. She was being very flirty with me, and she was very drunk. And I definitely took advantage of her being drunk. We got in the back of my van, and we fooled around a little bit. Well, no, she passed out. I'm not gonna bullshit you. And I had sex with her while she was passed out. She kind of came to, and she realized that we had had sex, and she started hitting me. And I started hitting her back.
When you say by hitting, were you punching her?
Yes.
Okay.
And then she started to scream. And I strangled her, strangled her, I strangled her, and I killed her.
We're done. He's admitted that he did this. Once he gets past the point of the strangulation, it's just filling in little holes, thinking part for the investigation, but also for the family. They're going to want answers. They're going to want to know things.
I drove around. I drove a whole day with her in the back of my van.
Was she just in the back of your van, or was she in something?
I had her inside the cooler. I went back to the bakery. I put Kenya in the freezer. I didn't know where else to do. I didn't know where else to put her. I cut Kenya's clothes off, and I burned them. I burned everything that she touched, and then I drove to where I took you guys today.
It was difficult to hear what he was saying. I'm just thinking to myself, you have no idea the impact that you had on so many lives. Her family, her friends. You have no idea what you've done.
I think his motive was power. He was nothing more than a predator. You know, he was looking for an opportunity to take advantage of really intoxicated women. And that's exactly what he did. And I think that if he'd gotten away with Lydia also, definitely, I think there would have been more victims. After Travis confessed, he pled guilty at his first court appearance to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He then also pled guilty to the attempted murder of Lydia Tillman and ultimately was sentenced to 48 years consecutive to his Denver case.
There is no such thing as closure. There's no time heals all wounds or anything like that. We are stuck on April 1st. I always wanted to know what she was going to end up being. She should be 27 now, and what would her life be like? What are the things she would be doing? Those types of questions will never go away, ever.
Kenya was everything to me. She, like, from the moment I met her, I knew that she was the person I wanted to be when I grew up. Even at 15 and she was 19, I was like, when I grow up, I want to be just like her. But now that I'm 24, I'm like, man, a 19-year-old, that's a baby. They're just starting their life. I wish I could be the person that Kenya was at 19 and accomplish what she had accomplished at the age of 19 and touch as many hearts as she had touched. I feel like no matter what I do, Kenya's always there. I will never let her story die. She will forever be in my heart, and anyone that I come in contact with will always know about Kenya.
For more about Criminal Confessions, go to oxygen.com.
There had been an elderly woman that was assaulted in her residence.
I've seen a lot of things in my career. I can't believe someone could do that to another human.
She is one of the most important people that I have ever had in my life. I couldn't breathe.
It was like a shot in the heart.
In the neighborhood we're in, it's a bad neighborhood. That's not every day the night that I should stay home.
I know that Mama got $6,500. She doesn't trust anybody.
I just need you to be honest with me. I'm gonna tell you everything.
I was not certain that she would survive her injuries.
You know, Frog, I know where you're going. I can't confirm none of that.
We knew beyond a shadow of a doubt he was lying to us.
Me and God had to have a conversation about all this.
I can't believe it.
emergency?
My mother's bloody. I don't know what happened. I just got in.
Slow down for me, okay? Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. It looks like the head.
Is she conscious?
Mama stopped. Yes, she's moving around, but she's trying to touch the scars. I'm trying not to let her do it.
What is your last name?
Watts.
Your first name?
Lee.
And how old is your mother?
She's 60.
All right, Lee. We've got your paramedics that can be en route shortly, okay?
On April 7th, on Sunday morning, I got a call from Lee Watts, who I was dating at the time. Well, he was frantic. He told me that Mama had been hurt, that there was blood everywhere, and I told him to hang up and call 911. My son Jameson and I got in the car and we drove quickly. When we got there, it was surrounded by police and an ambulance with flashing lights. Lee was sitting on the porch with his head in his hands, and I ran to him, "What's going on? What happened? What happened?" And he said, "Someone attacked Mama." His mother was his world. It just broke him.
When I arrived at the house, I went in to see if there was anything I could do to assist Lee Watts' mother. There was no apparent damage to the door like there had been any forced entry. Blood all over the bed. I saw her laying in the bed. She was gurgling. A lot of people call that the death rattle. If you hear the death rattle, it's going to be pretty bad. She had a lot of damage to her head that you could see. It wasn't a nice sight. I began to notice blood splatter on the ceiling that is indicative of a blunt object being used. If you strike someone, and then when you raise it to strike that person again, a trail of blood can fly off the end. I've seen a lot of things in my career. I can't believe someone could do that to another human.
Ethel Darlene Adamson was a silly, over middle-aged pixie. She was known by everybody who knew her as Little Mama. I had just got through a divorce when I met Mama. And Mama was the light at the end of the tunnel. She is one of the most important people that I have ever had in my life. I have a son, Jameson, and he was 2 at the time. She was like a grandmother to him.
She was a very sparky person. She was always upbeat. She walked in the room and you felt that you were around somebody that you could trust.
Ethel is an amazing mother to everybody, but Lee was her pride and joy. He was the light of her life.
Lee loved his mom. If she asked him to fly to the moon, he would have gone.
On the 4th of July, Mama brought Lee Watts to my house. I liked Lee Watts immediately, and we started dating. When the ambulance left, Jay ran after it.
I tried really hard to catch it. I couldn't. And Lee ran behind me and he caught me before I got too far down the road.
Lee picked Jameson up and held him and told him everything was going to be okay. But to see your child run after his grandmother, it was devastating. Lee was definitely in shock.
Looking at the scene, I felt a heavy responsibility because I was not certain that she would survive her injuries.
Lee Watts and Vicki Hodges agreed to meet me down at the police department. I just needed to sit down and talk to him and get as much information as I could.
I kind of want to find out just a little background about Mom a little bit. Does she date or any just friends in general that come over often?
No, sir.
Alright. Explain to me, like, what's your living situation? You say you don't live there necessarily?
Stay with Mama 3 nights a week. And stay with Victoria 4 nights a week. This last night happened to be the night that I should have stayed home.
During this time, homicide detective Eric Ewing would conduct an interview with Vicki Hodges to see if there's any corroborating statements or any indiscrepancies in their stories.
So you and Lee, you were saying a boyfriend, girlfriend?
Yeah, we've been dating since, he says July, I say August, so. And yes, I know about his record, and I know he's been in prison, and I know all that. And I also just think everybody deserves a chance.
I had known Lee Watts for a number of years. I'd arrested him in the past for some burglaries, but I'd never known him to do any violent actions himself.
I have to tell you, there's no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's no anything you smoke outside, and it better only be a cigarette in my house, or we do not date.
When I met Lee, I could tell he was really making an effort to do right. He was attending church, he was making money, he was providing rent money for Mama. He tried really hard to let the past be the past.
Sitting down with Lee initially, my approach was to just let him explain to me where was he the night before, how did he leave his mother, just try to get as much information as I could.
Just prior to you leaving, you say you left at 12 p.m. How long had you been there yesterday?
I was with her up until 12 o'clock last night. That's when I went to the warehouse.
Lee told us that prior to the morning when he found Ethel, he had been out scrapping metal at the old Frosty Mourn building all night and had fallen asleep inside the building before waking up and coming home that morning.
He's working really hard. He is scrapping, and he does have several contracts to do work, and he's been doing really good.
Vicki Hodges told us that she was aware that Miss Adams had gotten a VA settlement that had to do with the death of her husband fairly recently, that could possibly be a motive for somebody to have broken in with the purpose of stealing that money.
I know that Mama got $6,500. I know she called me and told me. Now, she wanted to keep money around the house, and she doesn't trust anybody, and I told her to go put that in the bank.
She had told me she had got a settlement from about a VA, but she never told me how much, because I told her, it's none of my business, Mom, it's your money. I don't want to know anything about it. And I didn't. She's been out every day this week, or every day since she's gotten the car, buying things.
So she bought a car?
Yeah. Went to Walmart, buying all the groceries.
300 groceries?
Yes, sir. In the neighborhood we're in, it's a bad neighborhood. And she's going out every day buying new things.
Mama couldn't afford 2 or 3 cases of Diet Dr. Pepper, which was her favorite. But when she got that money, she went out and bought 20 cases. Oh, they were on sale, girl. Don't you even worry, she told me. And I told her, Mama, you cannot do that. Don't buy a lot of stuff and take it in bag after bag after bag. Don't do that. Because there were people in that neighborhood who would rob you for a dime.
There were leads to follow, leads to develop.
6 was another familiar character.
Again, come back with money.
How much?
Hundreds.
We found a claw hammer.
Something bad happened to his mother.
I don't know.
Did he sound,
He was scared to death.
There had been an elderly woman that was assaulted in her residence, and robbery was probably the motive for that assault. The victim was a female named Ethel Adamson. Ethel was still alive, but hanging on by a thread. There were a number of people that could have been potential suspects, people in the neighborhood, other people associated with Ethel that we may not have been aware of. While we were interviewing Vicki Hodges and Lee Watts at the same time, it really just came down to needing boots on the ground trying to gather information. Vicki was concerned that neighbors might have seen Ethel Adamson as behaving slightly out of the usual coming into the large amount of money that she had. So I instructed a crime scene team, in addition to processing the crime scene, to search the entire house to see if cash was hidden anywhere in the house.
We looked in all of the places that Vicki said the money may be. There was no money in the house to be found, but on the living room floor in Ms. Adamson's house, there was a claw hammer.
The hammer, while out of place, it wasn't gory or graphic, and it doesn't jump out as the weapon that was used for the assault.
The crime scene team still collected the hammer so that it could be examined by the criminal lab to see if it had any blood or trace evidence on it.
In similar cases, when we've sent off evidence to be processed for fingerprints or DNA, it has taken weeks and months to get results back from those analysts. In interviewing Vicky Hodges and Lee Watts separately and at the same time, we're able to get a baseline of any information that they're able to provide from the night before, as well as that morning.
So you worked at the warehouse for how long last night?
3-4 hours. There's a mat down there, I just lay down on the mat and sleep.
And then you woke up around what time?
Around 7:38. I came home, it was around 9 o'clock. As I went to put the key in the doorknob, it just pushed right open. That's when I stepped in, I heard Mama gargling and stuff like that, so I immediately went in there, and that's when I found her. First thing I done was call baby girl. She's a retired RN. Yeah, then I called 911.
The fact that he first called his girlfriend Vicky Hodges prior to calling 911, I thought it was very odd, not normal thing. His explanation was that she was a nurse and that he thought she could give good advice. As we're talking more, he says the last person he spoke with that night when he was scrapping metal was Vicky. He actually made a call to her on his cell phone. He says that he did not make any calls between then and the time that he went home to find his mother.
Can I grab your phone and you and I take a look at it together? You good with that?
I took that opportunity to ask him if I could see his phone to corroborate what he was saying.
Your call log starts at 9 o'clock. What happened to all the calls prior to that?
Prior to Vicky's call that morning at 9 o'clock, all call history was non-existent. And the 911 call was singled out and deleted. I immediately thought it was weird. If that was deleted, what else could have been deleted? Was he purposely hiding something?
Where's all the rest of the calls from last night?
I must have come out last night. I have a tendency to clean my phone out.
Okay, do you recall erasing it this morning?
No, sir, I don't. I called 911 from that phone.
Okay. I'm not doubting it. I'm just curious what happened to the call log is all.
One of the advantages of having interviews going on simultaneously is when one of the investigators in one of the interviews finds out a key piece of information, they're able to stop and relay that information to the other investigator, and that may be a piece that they can use to really break the case.
He called 911, but then he removed the call from his phone to 911 out of the call log?
It is a little odd, but he may have been shaken. I don't know.
Did he sound,
He was scared to death. That phone, he was high pitched for him. Now, I have to tell you, y'all know Lee's record. I know Lee's record. He ain't held anything from me. He would never, okay? Let me state that from the depth of my soul. I know him, if anybody does, and you can take that to the bank.
I wanted Detective Ewing to know how good Lee was. This man is going to church. He is paying his bills. He is providing for his family. I knew Lee would never harm the only one who ever lifted him up.
I had just this thought of when you and I will come in here, we'll be able to discuss details and everything's going to make perfect sense. You see what I'm saying? It just, now that I'm in here, it just is slightly confusing, especially when it comes to the phone. You see where I'm coming from?
I knew that he was leaving out information. It was at this point that I decided to change my strategy and actually confront him with the inconsistencies that did not make any sense.
Your mother was already in bed by the time you left, correct? Yeah. And you locked the doors and deadbolts, everything.
Yes, sir.
You walked to the warehouse. Is there anybody that knew that you were going to the warehouse?
Yeah, my girlfriend knew I was going back to the warehouse.
Okay. Why at midnight?
That's when I get most of my work done.
Why?
It's just easier and cooler in there to work.
Did you work with anybody last night?
No, sir. I work alone.
Normally, Lee goes to the warehouse. Sometimes he'll leave at 11, sometimes he'll leave at midnight.
How does he usually get home, though?
He walks.
What were you wearing when you went back to the warehouse?
I was wearing these black slacks and that purple shirt.
Were you wearing the same shoes?
Yes, sir.
Why so dressed up at 12 o'clock at night and scrapping metals?
I think I was going to go to church this morning.
What does he normally wear when he works?
What he has on, except for his dress pants. He had his dress pants on because he was going to church, and his purple shirt's probably still on the porch. He had already changed, probably at the warehouse.
So everything Lee Watts is telling us, although it seems a little off, is backed up by Vicky.
How long ago did you buy those shoes?
These were given to me by a friend.
But you worked in them last night?
I walked around in them down last night.
What does that mean, you walked around in them?
Just picking stuff up, putting in piles. Really not any hard labor.
I'm going to pick for the phone.
It did stand out to me that he was wearing these nice clothes, these nice shoes, and there were no scuff marks, no dust, no dirt. At this point, I decided to just be quiet and create a moment of silence and give him an opportunity to feel that silence with anything he might want to say.
say something, you gotta take this along with detective. Please. I respect you doing your job. And I've just got this funny feeling that, I don't know.
You got the feeling like I'm accusing you?
Yep. I love my mother with all my heart. I would never lay a hand on her this way.
I do not doubt it. Do not doubt it at all.
In this early stage, we had to consider just about anybody a suspect. But in the back of my mind, it stuck out to me like he felt a little bit guilty. After interviewing Lee Watts, Detective Ewan and myself decided to take Lee to the warehouse.
Detective Duke and I wanted to check out Lee's alibi.
When we arrived, Detective Ewan and I walked with Lee to the front of the building. It's an abandoned building that had been boarded up, and there was a piece of plywood that was covering a hole in the wall. Lee claimed that was his entrance. He crawled through the hole. He came to the front door, and as soon as he opened it, I could see that his pants were immediately dirty and dusty, and his shoes were scuffed. Immediately, I knew there was no way he could have been wearing those exact clothes to scrap metal in that building. It was at this point that he was the number one suspect. To me, it was clear that Lee Watts was not given 100% of the truth, but the investigation was still fresh. There were leads to follow, leads to develop. We started talking to people in the neighborhood to see if anybody had seen anything or heard anything.
One neighbor recounted seeing Lee at the home about an hour to 30 minutes prior to police being called.
The gentleman next door said to me that he had seen Mr. Watts leaving the house about 6 in the morning. That didn't sit real well with me because that's not the way I understood Mr. Watts' original story.
On April the 9th, we learned that Ethel Adamson had passed away in the hospital. I personally was kind of heartbroken. This mother suffered the way she did and couldn't speak for herself. I felt a sense of responsibility to find out who did this to Miss Adamson. And this immediately changed the investigation from an aggravated assault to a homicide.
When I heard that Ethel Darlene Adamson had left this world, I couldn't breathe.
I didn't know what to do. It was like a shot in the heart. I took it pretty hard, for sure.
As lead investigator, it was my job to meet with Lee in person where he was working that day and inform him that his mother had passed away. He fell down to his knees in grief and had implored me to find his mother's killer.
Part of most investigations, if there are phone records that can be used to assist in the investigation, we subpoena those records. On April 11th, we received the results from the subpoena of Lee Watts' phone activity and phone records. We found that there was a lot of activity on the phone, and the phone's location had traveled a larger distance than just the area that Lee claimed to have been at all night.
This was a critical point in the investigation because we knew beyond a shadow of doubt he was lying to us. There was one number that stood out to us on the records because it was called multiple times that evening. It ended up being Jesse Buckley. So I called the number, and he subsequently agrees to come in and speak with us. We did learn that Lee often went by the street name of Frog.
You know Frog?
The white guy, Frog, thing on that. I heard of him, but I met him one night.
Jesse quickly explained to us that he was approached by Lee, and that Lee was looking to buy drugs to party that evening.
He was like, hey man, y'all know where to get something? So I told him where to get something.
But you took him.
Yeah.
Okay. How much money do you have on him? Do you remember?
Oh my goodness. He kept leaving, gonna get money. Kept leaving, gonna get money. But he told me he'd text me once he get the money.
Lee, who was in fact not just in one location, but he was bouncing around all over the place. And we knew that Ethel had gotten several $1,000s, and that Lee is just not known for carrying a lot of money around. It appeared to us now that Lee had been taking her money to supply his drugs.
Something bad happened to his mother.
I know where you're going with this. I don't know.
Okay.
I can't confirm nor deny. All I know is that after he kept going and coming and going, I left the house. I know he's supposed to have went to A&W Hotel after that. This girl named Six, she said she was gonna call y'all.
He went to the hotel with Six.
You know Six?
Yes.
We knew Six, and we knew Six as Satara.
Six was another familiar character in the District 2 area, so we were able to locate her relatively quickly.
Knowing that she was there, knowing she was with Lee that night, we knew that talking to her was our next step to see if she could give us another piece to this puzzle.
I just need you to be honest with me. This last Saturday night, Sunday morning, there was a dude you were with. You remember his name? White dude? Frog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole night, finna tell you everything.
Okay.
He was buying dope. He kept coming back from his mother's house getting dope. Coming back with money, getting dope.
How much?
Hundreds.
What was he wearing that night?
He had a t-shirt and some jeans on.
Just t-shirt and some
Yeah.
jeans? Always the same thing from the first time you saw him to the end?
No. Mm-mm.
What do you mean?
Different shirts every time he came back.
In our mind, there's only one reason why he would have changed his clothes, and it's because he may have victimized his mother and got blood splatter all over him.
He just said he just went to smoke in peace. He got some more dope from the little dudes. We went to the room.
To which room?
A&W.
Okay.
Yeah, because I said you did something wrong. I don't know. I got that intuition sometimes. And I told him whatever it is, God bless him and still forgive him.
And what did he say?
He started crying.
This really takes us to almost a point to where we believe he would have had a natural reaction to victimizing his mother and feeling bad for what had just happened.
Did Frog himself pay for the room?
Yeah.
He did?
Yes.
Well,
we checked in at, it was 4 or 5 in the morning.
4 or 5, okay.
And then after that, he said, I'll be right back. And it was like 8:30. I'm going to my mom's house to get some more money. That's what he said.
Did he ever come back?
Satara further corroborated what Jesse had told us about staying at the A&W motel. We were able to send investigators over to that motel and confirm through their records that he had purchased a room for that night.
He did something to his mom, didn't he? I could feel it.
We're trying to figure it out.
That's scary.
Jesse Buckley and Satara, both of them were very forthcoming in our interview. And everything that we've developed absolutely points right back to Lee. We know Lee is lying to us, so we need to confront him on his broken alibi to get him to tell us the truth.
So the cell phone records showing that Lee wasn't where he said he was could have just been the fact that he was ashamed or scared to tell Vicky that he had been out partying or in fact been out with other females. So given the phone records and the new information, I wanted to bring Vicky back in to confront her with the information. Vicky's a pivotal person because since the incident, she has been with Lee almost 24 hours a day, and she would be a first-hand account of his behavior and actions since the time his mother was found.
Okay, and you all have spoken obviously a whole lot since this whole incident happened.
I didn't tell him. He asked me point blank if I thought he was guilty.
Would you tell him?
No, because I don't.
I want you to tell me where in your heart, based on what he's told you, what you feel or whatever, Lee spent Saturday night before coming home and finding his mother Sunday morning.
At the warehouse. I wouldn't believe him any other way.
Okay.
I'd always believed that Vicky cared about what happened to Ethel and wanted to get justice for Ethel. I just felt like Vicky had unintentionally been providing a security blanket for Lee, and it was my plan to take that security blanket away.
Do you love Lee?
No.
Did you love little mama?
Absolutely.
And you told us that Saturday that if we figured like we felt like we knew it hurt her, that you would accept
You give
it.
me 1 ounce of proof and I'll help you.
All right.
You understand me?
But
son, you better have it.
Okay, now I want you to listen to me.
And I'll never forget it. He said, Miss Vicki, you said that if we had even a breadcrumb's worth of evidence against Lee, that you would do whatever we ask. And he said, I have a whole loaf.
I'm going to tell you that Saturday night, Lee was in the projects, using drugs and tricking with prostitutes.
And you know that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
I'm going to go bring you Lee's phone records.
Okay.
Alright.
I want you to do that.
Hang on a second.
Because then I may have to go home and sit down and be sick.
Okay, you hang on a second.
Okay.
He left the room, and me and God had to have a conversation about all this.
Lord, it just can't be. I'm sorry, Father. It just can't be. He would not do this. I can't, Lord Father, I can't. I can't believe this. Lord Jesus, Father in heaven, this just cannot be.
I stepped back into the interview room, and she and I went over the phone records together. You could see realization slowly starting to set in with her.
What I want to point out to you is one particular phone number.
I don't know that number.
I know you don't. Belongs to a guy named Jesse Buckley.
Don't know him.
You don't know him. You're right. Lee gives him $200. They score Lee
Didn't have that much.
Follow with me.
I'm on it.
They score Lee $200 worth of dope. And Lee has smoked all the dope at his house. So they're working on getting some more dope, and Lee goes and gets some more money. And Lee provides more money, and they smoke more dope. A girl named Six. Do you know who Six is?
No, I've never heard of that one.
Eventually, Lee and Six leave and go to the A&W Motel and get a room.
It was absolutely important that she just hear the cold, hard truth about what he had actually been up to that night, and the fact that he had a whole bunch of money to be able to do it with.
So what you're telling me is you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the man I've led around my child and in my home
I'm going to let you draw
my best friend.
I'm not done. I'm going to let you draw your conclusion. I think he's crashed.
Been in my home.
I think he's
been in my
I
home.
understand that, Vicki.
He killed my best friend. Okay, I can't handle any more today. I'm sorry, I cannot.
All right, just hold tight for me for just a second, okay?
I will be sick in just a few minutes.
Okay, you want the bathroom?
No, I just want to.
Vicki, tell me what you need.
I want my friend back. I need.
He lied to me. He told me he was innocent. He told me he didn't do it. He told me he loved his mom. He told me he would never hurt his mom. He told me he loved my son. He told me that everything was going to be okay, that he was going to be all right, and that he was going to be who he said he was. And he lied. And if he lied about that, then he lied about hurting someone that I loved more than my own life.
We're going to resolve this tonight, I feel like. But if for some reason we don't, this is what I want to tell you. And I know it hasn't been intentional, but you have provided protection for Lee.
I didn't mean to.
I know that you didn't, because you believed in him. But you have to understand what I'm saying. You're the only one. This is where we are.
I wanted her to know that there was nothing at this point in time she would be able to do to assist or help Lee anymore. That what's done is done, and for her sanity and for the sake of her child, she needed to get up and remove herself from the situation.
You've given me the ounce I asked for. I'm going home now, if that's okay.
I felt bad for Vicki and her son Jameson because they had both become so close to Lee and trusted fully in him. I never really had a doubt about Vicki, but at the conclusion of this interview, it was 100% clear in my mind that she had no knowledge before or after about what Lee Watts had done to his mother Ethel.
When I left that room after talking to Detective Newman, I got out the front door of the police station and collapsed in the parking lot. I did not make it to my car.
Even with everything that we've developed thus far in the investigation, it's really important to push Lee towards a confession. There's enough evidence to detain him, but if Lee Watts doesn't confess, we could lose the whole case.
You swear 100% hand to God this is the truth?
Yes, sir, yes. You swear that with your hand to God, it's all the truth.
And at the warehouse, Give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because we are investigating the murder of your mother.
I love my mother with all my heart. And I feel like that it's the same questions over and over and over. It's running me dry.
Whether he confesses or not could determine the outcome of the case in court. My plan is to become more confrontational with him and work towards that confession and work towards the truth.
My right hand on the Bible of God, I am telling you the truth.
If you can sit here and look me in the eye and say, my right hand on the Bible of God, I'm telling you the truth, you're not the kind of person who I thought you were. I thought that you had some shreds of dignity left. I thought you felt remorse and guilt for what happened to your mother. You asked me yourself, catch my mother's killer. And I can tell you who your mother's killer was.
Please do. It's not me, sir. I didn't do anything. I didn't kill my mother. I love my mother.
I had accused him of murder at that point, and I wanted some shock value. I placed that picture in front of him so he can admit it not only to me but to himself, because it's a pretty heinous act.
And what I told you right on the piece of paper when you took your notes is the truth.
This is such a bullshit lie. Lee, it's ridiculous. It's insulting is what it is. It's a homicide investigation. You think I don't know where you went? What times you went there? You had this in your pocket. You are lying, Lee.
I'm trying to bury my mother in a respectful way. I'm being accused of something I haven't done.
Lee, you were smoking crack that night with these drug dealers, laid up with a prostitute. Hotels keep records. We have the cell phone records with the cell site tower locations and all that. So you can talk all the shit you want, but I can prove. Walking over here, walking over there. And then, hey, he was over here talking to this person. Let's go talk to them. Oh, yeah, Lee had all these hundreds of dollars. You gave Lee crack. Boy, you sure have a reason to lie, huh?
I didn't have hundreds of dollars on me, sir. I didn't have more than $25 on me that night.
Crack dealers don't take credit, Lee.
You say that's bullshit. There's no disrespect to you. I think this detaining is bullshit. I don't think we have any evidence right now.
It's not one thing, Lee. It's building on top of building, on top of building, on top of building, until we have a friggin' mountain of evidence that points to the killer.
And you're saying it always points to me?
Yes, sir.
After continued denials, I decided to use minimizing words and frame his intent differently. It's a lot easier to say out loud that you knocked your mother out than full-blown murdered her and caused her death.
I believe you love your mother, Lee. I see it on you. And some of the things that I think about when I think about a man like you, dealing with the stress that you deal with, having the past that you've had. So maybe you didn't even mean to kill her. Maybe you just thought you were knocking her out, like you see on the TV 100 times. You know, hit someone in the back of the head, boom, they're passed out. So maybe that was your intent. But if that's what it is, you need to tell me that. Because if it's not what it is, it looks a whole lot worse.
All I can sit here and say, sir, is I love my mother from the bottom of my heart. I did not calculate anything. I didn't want her money. I've always told people I don't want my mama's money. All I want was my mama's love, and she gave that to me, and I gave it to her.
Okay, if you didn't calculate harming her, how did it come to pass?
How did what come to pass?
What did you hit her with?
I didn't hit her with anything because I didn't do this.
I try to appeal to Lee's higher self. If you hold somebody to a higher standard, sometimes they'll step up to that standard and hold themselves to that standard as well.
We all make mistakes. We all have low points in our life. But what determines the type of man we are is how we proceed from this point on now.
Can we have this conversation after I bury my mother? Because I know what happened that night.
I think you need to tell me what you have on your mind. We can't wait to hear that till after you bury your mother.
But I'm doing this for my mother.
I'm doing this for your mother.
You're detaining the wrong one, sir.
Who should I be detaining?
I don't know, and I want to help.
I want Lee to feel like the walls are closing in on him, and the only option that he has is the truth.
I didn't kill my mother, okay? Yes, I smoked a little dope that night. Sounds like the job to kill my mother.
Lee admitting to a little bit of drug use was a huge development because it was a polar shift from his total innocence. We were a lot closer to the truth, and it was time to just let him talk.
I got back to the house. I gave a call what time it was. Mama was asleep. I went around the other side of the bed. I reached up on her pillow and I got Mama's money. I never hit my mother in the head. Daddy,
a lot of personal courage to talk about the things you're talking about, and you have my respect.
But you still believe it. You still believe it.
I don't believe that you meant to hurt your mother.
Dale, I just sat here and told you the truth.
Yes, you did. There's just
one piece of this.
It's not easy to admit to things that make you look bad for anybody. I feel like acknowledging that is important, but not relenting in the fact that we need to end with the ultimate truth.
I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
I didn't do it. Lee, you can tell yourself that all you want. It doesn't change the facts.
You could visibly see the change in his demeanor and his posture. He looked defeated and visibly worn down. What he can't say with words, he's saying with his body.
Can I smoke a cigarette? Please?
We can go ahead and smoke a cigarette, but I gotta have you in handcuffs while we go out there.
There was a lot of intensity and a lot of pressure and a lot of coming around to more of the truth from Lee, so I felt that honoring his request for a cigarette and taking a break was a reasonable request.
I have to have somebody with us, for security purposes.
During the smoke break, Lee crouches down and leans up against the door, so I just kind of knelt down beside him. He'd been sitting for 3 hours speaking with Detective Ewing, and now he's talking to a different voice. And he just broke. He admits to me at that point that I hurt my mama. He had said the one thing that he never wanted to say.
So Lee just confessed to hurting his mother. Big problem, we didn't have it on recording. And in today's world, if it's not recorded, it didn't happen. We are 5 days in the investigation, and we had worked very hard to get Lee Watts to a place emotionally and mentally where he's able to confess, but it's outside on a break when he chooses to do so. I had the delicate task of getting him to restate on camera the hardest words that he's ever said in his life. This is literally the moment of truth.
I admire your courage and your bravery and your self-sacrifice for being able to tell the truth, and I know it hurt. But we need to finish up and then be able to move on.
Came back to sleep. Sat around for a few minutes, and I went in and I hurt my mom.
He expresses that he hurt his mother, which I feel is a minimization of the act, but I'm okay with, because that's what he needs to say in order to be able to say it out loud. And he's still taking responsibility for his actions. Regardless, it's a confession.
Why do you think you hurt her that time?
I don't know. I really don't know.
So you didn't plan it out or anything?
No, I didn't plan it out. I didn't.
But how did you hurt her?
I don't know how many times I did, but I ain't with a hammer.
To perpetrate an act like that on a total stranger would be heinous, but for the person to be your own mother, it's unfathomable.
I just wanted somebody to love me. A hug, a kiss on the head, especially from my mother. All I wanted to hear was those 3 words. I love you, but it never hurt.
It was offensive to me personally that he would try and make himself somewhat of a victim, because in all the time that I've known Lee Watts, wherever he fell down in life, Ethel was always the one to pick him up and at a minimum allow him back in her house and put a roof over his head and food in his mouth.
I feel like obtaining that money so he can go party was what drove him to commit the act that night. And had he not been in that situation, had he not been doing drugs, Ethel Adamson would still be alive today.
When Lee Watts confessed to killing my best friend in the world, my sister in faith, I can honestly say I knew hate for the first time.
I felt betrayed. Like, how dare you? You hug me and hold me and tell me it's gonna be okay when you did it.
The DNA analysis and the fingerprint analysis on the hammer revealed there was Mrs. Adamson's blood, DNA, on the hammer, but there were no prints linking it to Mr. Lee Watts, her son. Mr. Watts' confession was very important in returning the verdict.
When the jury watched the confession of Lee Watts, you could tell by the body language of almost the entire jury it was over. The confession of Lee Watts was definitely the keystone to this case. It made this case.
I do not recall Mr. Watts showing any remorse or emotion during the trial.
The jury convicted him of first-degree felony murder and convicted him of especially aggravated robbery. Lee Watts was sentenced by the court to life with 25 consecutive. His parole date is 2077. We see a lot and do a lot in this profession, but still the memory of a son that was able to kill his mother with a hammer, it sticks with you forever.
I can't fathom why a son would do that.
This case was very important to a lot of people, so having the resolution at the end was extremely important for the family, but it was also important for the investigators involved in this case. In the end, I believe Ethel Adamson got the justice that she deserved.
For more about criminal confessions, go to oxygen.com.
My next door neighbor has been chopped up. Oh my God, he's just someone broke into his house.
They robbed Paul Quinn and left him tied up on the kitchen floor. His wrists were taped together. There's a large amount of blood on the floor.
There was no explanation for this level of violence.
My dad was a disabled veteran. Who could have done this, and why would somebody do this to my father?
I could see a partial tag. This was probably the victim's vehicle. The suspect decides this is time for him to run.
As they picked him up, a gun fell out of his waistband. There was a problem.
So we have one suspect, that's it here.
We were at a loss for where the second suspect was located.
The detectives were asking all sorts of questions, and I told them that Paul had caretakers there in the daytime.
Do you know Mr. Want?
I used to work for him.
There was literally nothing to connect her to the scene itself.
What we had to do now was figure out exactly who did what.
I don't know what you told them and all this kind of stuff, but I don't think you're being straight up.
I live in Blues Creek. It's in northwest Gainesville, Florida. It's very quiet and it just feels really comfortable. I always felt that this was a really safe neighborhood. I was never afraid to go out by myself or be here by myself at all. And then January 9, 2012, it was close to midnight. And I heard a car screeching, and I could see lights in my front bedroom window. The next thing I know, the doorbell was ringing. I jumped out of bed, and needless to say, I was terrified.
911, what's the emergency? My next door neighbor has been chopped up. Oh my God, he's in his wheelchair. He's been my neighbor for 8 years.
What's his name, ma'am?
His name is Paul Quant. They're calling.
We're getting you some help. Just stay on the line. Stay with him. Okay, they're coming to your house as fast as they can. Tell me exactly what happened.
He's banging on my door. He is covered in head to toe. In blood. He said someone broke into his house. They tied him up.
Okay.
He is beaten to a pulp.
How many people broke into his house?
How many people, Paul?
Well, this is a girl and a guy.
Oh my God. A man and a woman.
Can you ask him when they left his house?
About 30 minutes ago, he thinks. So what did they want? They cleaned his face out. And they stole his Cadillac, a white Cadillac Eldorado, disabled veteran Florida tax.
Okay.
Oh, I know. She's been in the ambulance. I'm so sorry.
By that time, his consciousness was fading. He had a big laceration on his head. There was a big cut on one of his arms. You couldn't even see his skin for the blood. The paramedics took Paul to Shands University Medical Center. Maybe a lesser man couldn't have been that strong or that determined to come over. But he had a will to live and a will for justice, and he wanted someone to say one last time to his children that I love you. And I felt unbelievably honored that he came to me to help him.
We were in bed, and the doorbell rings. It's Gainesville Police Department. And they say, your father's been attacked. You need to go to the hospital. Who could have done this, and why would somebody do this to my father? My dad moved out to Blues Creek in 2007. He was a disabled veteran, and he lived by himself.
He was disabled a long time, and it was very important to him that he be independent. All the neighbors loved him. I mean, you would just always hear about, oh, Mr. Paul, or, you know, Mr. Paul and the dog. And he had a lot of people out there who knew what was going on with him or were there for him. And they all kind of watch out for each other.
I was on the opposite side of town when this call came out. I knew there are officers that are going to be there a lot quicker than I am to make sure the scene is secure. So instead of going directly to the house, we're looking for the victim's Cadillac when we're on our way there. As I'm going south on 43rd Street, I go into Westchester, which connects to Blues Creek. And as I pull into that subdivision, there was a vehicle headed the opposite direction. And I could tell that it was a Cadillac.
4300 US 441.
I was headed to Mr. Quant's house, and then the car was spotted, so I did a U-turn, went the direction that the chase was coming.
We pull up to the light. The vehicle stops maybe 100 yards short of the intersection. There was a wheelchair ramp on the back of it. He sits there for a second. I could see a partial tag, and at that point I realized that this was probably the victim's vehicle. The suspect decides this is time for him to run. He accelerates to 100, 110 miles an hour. We're traveling south back into the city, and at 23rd Avenue, the car pulled out in front of the suspect. The suspect swerves to the right, and I swerve to the left with cars coming at me. And then I fall back in right behind the suspect vehicle. We were coming up on traffic on Southwest 5th Avenue and 13th Street. This is a college town, and there's going to be kids out everywhere. I'm concerned about the suspect, or me, striking an innocent victim.
All their officers started blocking other intersections to try to keep other people who were driving from coming and getting in the way of the chase.
I slow down for the intersections. The suspect didn't slow down. The suspect struck a vehicle that was sitting at the light. He then struck another vehicle that was sitting in one of the side streets. The adrenaline is very high at that point. I had no idea what his plan of action was. We need to get him in handcuffs as quickly as possible.
We found one person who had the same address as the first suspect. Couldn't find her, but we did find her boyfriend.
She's been my girlfriend for about 6 years.
Last night, did you talk to her?
No, she had to go to work.
We believe that he's covering up for his girlfriend.
On January 9th, 2012, after Mr. Quant was severely beaten, there was a chase of over 100 miles an hour until the suspect crashed his vehicle. As I held him at gunpoint, other officers were able to remove him from the car. He's handcuffed, and we take him to the side of the road. I made sure I cleared the car, make sure there was nobody else in the car.
Okay, so we have one suspect, that's it here.
Several one suspect.
There's a problem. According to the 911 call, we knew that 2 people were involved in this crime, and the second suspect was a female. We didn't know who she was or where she was at. So at that point, I took the suspect over to a vehicle to be able to search his pockets. As they picked him up, a gun fell out of his waistband, and we found evidence on him, a couple bloody rolls of duct tape, a stun gun, some bloody latex gloves. But the suspect didn't have any identification on him. We didn't know who he was. He refused to give us information. He was being difficult. He wouldn't look at us, and he wouldn't talk to us at all about the other suspect that might be involved.
He had no injuries associated with the car crash whatsoever, but he was taken to the hospital as a precautionary measure. The only injuries they noted at the scene that were significant were his fists, likely from beating Mr. Quant.
By the time I went in to see my father, it had been several hours. The doctors seemed at that point to be most concerned about swelling in his brain due to head trauma. His head was swollen up like a basketball, and
He was not recognizable.
yeah. I mean, certainly he wasn't conscious. Why would somebody do this to my father? My dad was funny. He was social. He was easy to get along with. You're always hopeful that, well, this is going to be okay.
One of the weirder things that we found out is 2 rooms down from him was the guy who did this.
And there was talk.
There was conversation.
We could go drag him out of that room and wear him out.
Right.
But
better
cooler heads prevailed.
At the hospital, I went to check on the suspect to try to get more information, but he still refused to talk.
The suspect is arrested for attempted first-degree murder, home invasion robbery, fleeing and attempting to elude, and probably a bunch of other stuff that I can't remember right now. But he refused to be interviewed. He invoked his rights, and law enforcement tried to speak with him, but he refused to speak.
At that point, we knew that the only way to find out his identification was to fingerprint the suspect so we could run it through the automated fingerprint identification system to try to get his name. After that, I checked on Mr. Quant. With the injuries he sustained, Mr. Quant was still fighting for his life. But we were very much hoping that Mr. Quant was going to be okay and that he would be able to tell us exactly who did what.
The house had been ransacked. The televisions were smashed, closet doors were open, the safe had been emptied, and there was blood. There was a lot of blood on the floor and splattered on the walls and the countertop. It was a violent incident that had occurred.
The skin on the back of Mr. Quant's arm had been sawed off with a knife in about an 8-inch spot. And there was only one explanation for why that had occurred, and that was that he was tortured.
I've been to a lot of crime scenes in 38 years, and as far as just torturing someone and spending time trying to force someone to talk, this is the worst.
there was no explanation for this level of violence.
The crime scene's telling me that two people had robbed Mr. Quant. They left Mr. Quant tied up on the kitchen floor. His wrists were taped together, and he crawled over and got a bottle of cooking oil and found a knife where he was able to stab this vegetable oil, leak it down onto his wrist, and move back and forth and get the duct tape off his wrists. To be able to receive the beating that he received and the torturing he got and then still make it to the neighbors, it's just incredible. The guy was tough. Because there's no forced entry, and the fact that Mr. Quant had been tortured to get his safe open, I thought someone who knew Mr. Quant and had been in the house probably was involved. At that point, from the fingerprints, we had gotten the information on who the suspect was that was driving Mr. Quant's car. His name was Austin Mark Jones.
Austin Jones had a criminal record. He had been arrested for an aggravated assault, and he ended up being incarcerated for a period of time in the Columbia County Jail.
We knew Austin was involved, but we couldn't find any connection between Austin Mark Jones and Mr. Quant. So we started doing some more research.
The detectives were asking all sorts of questions. I told them that Paul said there were two people in the house. They asked me if he had people coming and going, who's been in the house, who does he know, and I told them that he had caretakers there in the daytime.
One of the things that the VA hospital had set up with Dad was to have home health care people come into the home and help him out. There was one healthcare worker that he just didn't feel comfortable with. After she'd worked there briefly with him, he noticed one of his house keys was missing. Could it have gotten misplaced? Absolutely. But he had a concern, so we did something about it. One of the first things we did, changing the locks in his house, and he requested that whenever these healthcare workers came, they had to sign a sheet of paper saying, yeah, they were here and these are the things they did. And they would give him a copy of it. Well, he filed those copies.
We found the stacked papers in a drawer next to the TV in the living room. And of course, we started going through all the names of the home health care nurses that had been to Mr. Quant's house and comparing the addresses that they had with the addresses we found for Austin Mark Jones. And we found one person who had the same address in the past, and that was Miranda Martin. At that point, we know the connection is there. We needed to find Miranda and find out what was going on.
Austin Jones, the suspect we arrested for the beating of Paul Quant, he invoked his rights, and law enforcement tried to speak with him, but he refused to speak.
We suspected that the second suspect may have been one of Paul's home health care nurses. We found one person who had the same address in the past as Austin Jones, and that was Miranda Martin. First place we looked for her was at her listed address here in Gainesville. Couldn't find her, but we did find her boyfriend.
Chad McKee said that they lived in that apartment together. He didn't seem all that surprised to see us.
We asked him to come in and speak with us.
How you doing? I'm all right. How are you?
Your boyfriend was very cooperative, and we need to get as much information as we can, as fast as we can, so that we can locate Miranda Martin.
What can you tell me about Miranda?
She's been my girlfriend for about 6 years.
Do you know where she's at right now?
As far as I know, she was at work.
You know a guy by the name of Austin?
It's Miranda's cousin.
He's in jail. Or he's at the hospital. He's fixing to go to jail.
All I can tell you about Austin is that I know that he has been in trouble a few times. But other than that, I don't really know Austin.
When's the last time you heard from Miranda?
It was 2:54 a.m. She told me she was at her work, like in her patient had fell asleep. And that was really, I just told her I was watching a movie.
What time was Miranda supposed to get off work?
She told me 8.
Well, we don't want you caught up in something that you shouldn't be caught up in. Because what we're investigating is very serious crime. Attempted murder, home invasion, robbery, a lot of bad stuff.
The detectives told him the gravity of the situation. He didn't show any outward signs of nervousness.
It would be really out of character for her to do anything like what you're talking about. I mean, I've been with Miranda for 6 years, and she hasn't done anything against the law other than traffic citations.
It's possible she's not involved in this.
No, I know, like I said,
it's possible our information has led us to her, and when we finally reach her, we'll find that she wasn't at all who we were looking to speak with.
Detective Honeycutt is playing a good cop, being understanding and nice.
Well, if you will, hang tight, and we're going to meet with the sergeant and make sure he's good with everything.
Our strategy from there was to have Detective Joe Mayo come in and play the bad cop.
I'm thinking maybe his subdued behavior and his attitude is because he's covering up for Miranda. Listen, dude, I don't know what you told them and all this kind of stuff and everything, but I don't think you're being straight up. I did come more aggressively towards him. We were trying to see if there's a change in his relaxed behavior and his body language. Now, I find it hard to believe that she's been your girlfriend for several years and you don't know anything.
I mean, what are you asking me if I think that my girlfriend...
I think that she asked you about it. She mentioned it in front of you.
She didn't mention it to me. I'm just as shocked as you are to find out that you guys are knocking on my door at whatever time and asking me if my girlfriend's committed attempted murder when she had to go to work, was what she told me.
By this time, we've got detectives making contact with Miranda's company, finding out that she's not at work.
When you just talked to her manager, she said she's not working today. Not at all. Why is she lying now about going to work?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Even though I told him she was lying and she wasn't at work, he seemed subdued once again, and his posture was sitting back in the chair.
Like I said, man, I don't have anything to hide. I can only pray that it doesn't have nothing to do with her, but from what it sounds like, that's not really the case.
I was starting to think, okay, maybe he doesn't know anything. He is just really a subdued kind of individual and doesn't show outwardly his emotions.
We had come to the conclusion that maybe she wasn't truthful with him and he wasn't a suspect, so we decided to get him to help us.
Call her, put her on speaker, say, hey, what's up? Are you coming home? What's the plan? And then we'll just go from there, see what happens.
It's voicemail.
The mailbox is full and cannot accept.
I don't think she's gonna pick up.
He did help, but she didn't answer the phone.
If Miranda was in trouble, if she couldn't come home to you, where was she?
Her mom.
What's her name?
Kathy Martin.
At that point, we sent detectives to Fort White to Miranda's mom's house. We needed to find Miranda and find out what was going on.
When we arrived, we found out that Miranda was actually there. This was a very big moment. We told Miranda that we needed to speak to her about Austin Jones and that we needed to get information about a person that was robbed and that was brutally beaten. She kind of had her head down and she kind of glanced up once in a while. It was very obvious to me that she knew she was in a real bad situation. We asked her if she'd be willing to cooperate and give us a statement, and she voluntarily agreed. Her and her mother decided to drive themselves to our police headquarters. As we're driving down the road, we're wondering what conversations are happening between the mom and Miranda. Are they preparing a story? Are they trying to get their facts together? We always worry when people have time to prepare their stories, they can tell a really good lie, tainting their version of what happened.
Detectives had located Miranda Martin, who was the cousin of Austin Jones, and she used to be a past caregiver of Paul Kwan.
Austin Jones was still at the hospital and still was not talking with the police.
Based on everything we had, there was a second person. We also knew that the second suspect was a female. What we had to do was figure out who the second person was.
They had identified Miranda Martin as a person of interest, but we did not know the extent of her involvement.
Miranda and her mom agreed to come to the station to be interviewed.
We always wanted to separate the two from each other so that we can get a separate account from each person.
How you doing? I'm Randy Roberts. Do you know Mr. Want?
Yes, sir. I used to work for him.
Oh, okay, well, he got hurt last night pretty badly.
She didn't seem to be too shocked by this information.
If I can help in any way, shape, or form, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Our primary focus was to get additional information on where Miranda was that night. Create a timeline of events that occurred where we can actually piece together where she was at a certain time and where she claimed she was at a certain time.
And tell me about your day yesterday.
I left my apartment. It was around 11, 12, and I went out to my mom's.
Yesterday, between daylight and dark, Austin asked Miranda if he'd give him a ride to his lady friend.
I met up with some chick, and that's the last I seen him.
Okay. You gave Austin a ride to where?
It was a parking lot off of, I don't know if it was 13th or 440 Wayne. I just dropped him off and left.
Okay, when you dropped him off and left him, where'd you go?
Dad thought I had to work, so I had to go back and pretend like I was getting my work clothes.
Why are you lying to Chad?
I lied to him last night because I just wanted to spend a night like with my mom and everything. And I didn't want him to get mad, so I told him I was working.
Miranda had admitted to lying to her boyfriend, Chad, about where she was at. And I think she's lying to us also.
She controlled that whole scenario with Chad. I think it illustrates, maybe the dark side of Miranda in terms of her, ability to manipulate the situation and be smarter than I think what she's displaying.
Okay, so you dropped Austin off.
And I left.
Then drove back to your mom's.
Yes.
So what time do you think you got to your mom's?
It was like 10.
Okay, so she left around dusk.
And made it in between 10 and 11.
Okay.
But it's, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 6 hours she's gone to just drop him off. Did she say if she went anywhere else after that, or?
Well, I thought she was going to work.
I felt that she did know that she wasn't at work, and she's covering up for Miranda. When people commit a crime, especially a violent crime, they talk to somebody that's important in their life. And I felt that she would have told her mom something.
If you can think of anything, I would much rather lay everything on the table. I don't know. Maybe everything that you've told us is what you know. I don't know. But I just like to let people know that from the very beginning. So they're all family related here. And in my experience, that makes it much more difficult to get people to be honest about things because they're going to want to protect each other.
So you were in Fort White at 10 o'clock. I take it that you had your phone with you.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that she was in Gainesville and not in Fort White at her mom's, but I've got to get her to trip up completely to get her to tell me more.
If your signal was bouncing off the tower towards Gainesville at 11 o'clock, would that surprise you?
Yeah, it would surprise me.
We didn't have the coordinates for the cell phone tower use yet, but it's a strategy to make her understand that we had ways of figuring out where she was and that she should start telling the truth.
If there is a reason, we want you to be able to explain it now before...
Okay, because I thought my boyfriend was cheating on me, okay? So I drove back just to see if his car was in the parking lot.
You drove by where?
My apartment.
Miranda kept changing her story. I was home at my mom's to now I'm going to check up on my boyfriend because he might be cheating on me.
And you got back to Gainesville at what time now?
It was around 1:30.
It was a big thing for us, for her to put herself in the area at the time the crime occurred. At that point, we know there's a lot more that Miranda did and participated in and planned than she's still letting on.
We have some reservations about where your daughter was last night. Please, be honest.
She spent the night at my house last night. She made it in between 10 and 11. She rented the movie Paul, and we watched that.
You're wrapped up in this thing. Because now you got your mom lying for you. Mama knew you weren't there.
Today, did she tell you to come in here and tell us this story? Did she tell you to come in here and say, Mom, tell him I did this, tell him I did that, help me, I'm in trouble?
As the interview with Miranda's mom continued, we realized that it wasn't really going anywhere. She seemed like she had committed herself to a particular story that may have been prearranged on their drive down to the police station, and so we concluded the interview with her.
It was disappointing that Miranda Martin's mother had not come off her story, so we knew we had to keep on working on Miranda, peeling back the layers to get the truth.
How many times total you think you worked for Paul?
Well, it was 3 days a week.
At least once a week, I guess, you'd make his bed.
Yes.
Okay.
The bed sheets, everything that took off the bed, put in the washer, and then put back on the bed.
So you never got anything off the closets?
The only time I ever went in the closet was just I hang up stuff, and that's it.
Okay, so you saw the safe there?
Oh, I didn't think that was like a safe or anything.
What do you think it was?
I thought it was just like a box thing, like a metal box.
I was getting a little aggravated with the lying that she was doing.
And be honest with me. What was the reason for bringing him over here? And be honest.
He was supposed to meet up with some girl. I dropped him off.
You dropped Austin off just down the road from Paul's house, right? Miranda, be honest with me. So you dropped him off just down the road from Paul's house, right?
Yes.
She gave a little bit of information about dropping Austin off right down from the house, but she wouldn't go any further.
I thought he was meeting some girl, and that's that. That's honestly it.
I took a break. I was a little frustrated, and sometimes strategies involve putting in different people. We thought we needed to have Lieutenant Alvosa come in fresh face. Maybe she'll give more.
Miranda, this is Will. Miranda, we want to clarify something, okay? And
there are two phases to an interview. There's an interview, and then there's an interrogation. But by the time Will Alvosa comes in, he's coming in now in an interrogation. An interrogation is forcing people to confront the fact that they're in significant trouble.
The doctor felt there was so much brain damage that you had no hope of him ever being a functioning human being. Ultimately, my sisters and I were going to have to make a decision. Do we let Dad go?
Gainesville Police Department, they were there constantly to just keep us updated. They were very adamant they were going to get to the bottom of this. They were not going to get some sleep. They were not going home until they got to the bottom of it.
At that point, Austin Jones still refused to speak. He went from the hospital to the jail and is waiting for his trial.
Miranda, I know we've been talking a long time to Detective Joe Mayo. Every time we come outside, there's a little bit of more information that you've disclosed. And that's why we keep coming back in here and asking you some more questions, okay? Because nothing seems to be adding up. We felt certain that Miranda was involved.
What we had to do now was figure out exactly who did what.
I get it now.
She seemed to be one of these individuals that told a lot of stories, but we knew we had to be patient and just keep at it.
So I want you to pay attention. I'm going to ask you some specific questions, okay?
Yes, sir.
When you guys went there last night, okay, and when you guys drove up there, you know, whatever you planned to do, did you expect it to unfold the way it unfolded? Did you expect Austin to act like that? Miranda, this is important. Things changed, right?
My tactic was to really make suggestions and let her answer the questions.
Things changed, right?
Yes, sir. I thought you were just gonna scare him, just scare him.
I'm like, thank the Lord we finally got her admitting that she did drop Austin off with the intent of him making contact with Paul Quant. And not for Austin to see a girl.
Okay, so what was Austin's new plans now?
I guess he just wanted everything.
I haven't seen everything that he's got, so you tell me what everything is. What does he want from Mr. Paul?
I didn't care about what he got or anything. Like, I didn't even want Austin to go in the first place.
But he did go, and you knew he was going there to scare him.
Brenda, did he tell you to wait for him?
I waited for him down the street where there was like a house for rent.
It must have been hell waiting. Did you ever go in the house just to see what was going on to get him?
Did you try to stop him?
I was only at like past the doorstep for a little while, and I froze.
Okay.
She finally has put herself there with Austin at Paul Quant's residence, but she's just showing peripheral complicity in the crime. We still needed more admissions from Miranda if we were going to charge her for her involvement.
So let me ask you, when you're just standing there, right? Were you in shock? Did you hear Mr. Paul yell for help?
I couldn't hear anything. It was...
Miranda, what was he saying?
It was just, honestly, I just couldn't hear anything.
It takes a lot to push somebody to that point and to inflict those kind of injuries that Paul Quant had. So I know he wasn't being quiet. If I could just put her there and tell her that she was there, she would reinforce and she would confirm that Mr. Paul Quant was begging for his life. One of my tactics with Miranda was to ask her the same questions over and over again, because every time Miranda tells us her version of the story, she's not telling me the truth, but she was telling me little pieces of the truth.
What time last night did you go over to Mr. Paul's house?
Between 9:30 and 10.
Between 9:30 and 10. And who went?
Austin went first, and then I followed. Austin rang the doorbell, and the next thing you know, he just pushes it open.
Did Mr. Paul see you?
I don't think he had a chance after Austin just pushed him.
Do you follow him into the... you follow Austin in?
Yes, so I was standing like at the edge. He was like throwing a mask at me, put this on.
And that opens up a whole bunch of questions. Well, why you wear a mask? You know, unless you didn't want Mr. Paul Quant to know who you were.
You threw the mask at you, told you to put her on?
Yes, sir.
She was really clinging to that minimization of, I didn't want to do it, but Austin made me do it.
And what color was the mask?
It was a red Elmo.
The Elmo mask, I think, is pivotal in terms of whether or not, you know, things happen impulsively or whether or not this is planned and organized and this is premeditated. And I think that's what it illustrates.
So you step in, and then where do you go from there?
That's when he had like a PIN number or whatever and was unloading everything.
He had a PIN number? Okay, so he got Mr. Paul's PIN number?
For the safe.
Okay. So did Austin tie him up?
Yes.
Mr. Quant, in my opinion, was not giving up the information about the safe and the ATM PIN number, and they were going to force him, whether that was by threatening him by destroying his property or threatening him by cutting him open with a fillet knife. They were going to get that information, and they did.
And what was Mr. Paul saying when he was being tied up?
I just wanted her to admit to me that she was there and she heard this man getting beaten.
Was he begging for his life?
He just kept saying, I'll give you everything you want. Please stop. Oh, that hurt.
And what was Austin hitting him with?
It looked like his fist.
His fist? And did you see Mr. Paul bleeding? Yes? Okay.
I believe we were making progress with her, and I was trying to get her to express and show that she was doing nothing to stop Austin from what he was doing. So she didn't intervene. And I'm still not convinced that she wasn't participating in that beating either.
I didn't know if Austin was about to do something to me next.
Okay.
She was ready to sort of characterize herself as a victim. Mr. Quant was still at the hospital in intensive care. So we knew that his situation was dire. But I felt like because Miranda, through Comfort Keepers, had been to Paul's house before, the physical evidence might not be strong enough with the jury.
Miranda Martin was legally permitted and should have been in there, so finding her fingerprints would have been meaningless. Finding her hair would have been meaningless. Finding her DNA would have been meaningless.
So if we didn't have those admissions or confessions from her, there was a real fear. She could get away with that crime.
So now you're into the house. You know that Austin's threatening him. You know that Mr. Paul's begging for his life. You know that Austin's hitting him, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
At this point in the interview, we had been talking to Miranda for 6 hours, and she kept adding on to the story, but she was still trying to minimize her actual involvement.
And you're saying Austin's collecting everything in the house to take it. So what did Austin take?
I seen him with a box of stuff.
A box of stuff?
I don't know what all was in the box.
But from her body language, I could tell that she was getting tired. She had been through such a traumatic event from the night before, and she was starting to wear out from being up all night.
Is there any chance that maybe you collect anything in the house? Did you take anything?
Austin just kept telling me, take it, take it.
And where did you put that stuff?
In the trunk of his car.
Did you drive the Cadillac out of the garage?
Yes, he made me drive to the banks.
You guys drove to the bank to use a debit card at the banks?
Yes.
What bank did you go to?
Capital something.
Did you go to an ATM machine? If we get some video from that ATM, is that going to be you?
Yes.
Her admissions were piecemeal. They were small admissions over long, lengthy interview. But eventually, Miranda Martin had finally confessed. She absolutely implicated herself in the crime.
How much money did you take out?
4.
So you took out 400? Okay. Where'd you go next?
To a bank on Newberry, but it had exceeded.
Oh, exceeded limit?
But that was you too. I mean, if we pull the bank records,
It's me.
it's you. Were you wearing a mask?
Yes.
Wearing a mask while you were doing it. Okay. What are you feeling right now, Miranda?
I'm the worst person in the whole entire world, and I let something bad happen to somebody that didn't deserve it, and I should have stopped it.
Do you feel responsible for it?
So at this point in the interview, I was satisfied that we had established that she was that second person that was responsible for the home invasion and for the beating of Mr. Paul Quant.
While I never believed that she was completely truthful in what she said, she was truthful enough for me to prosecute her for everything I intended to prosecute her for.
Right after we finished interviewing Miranda, we searched her car and we found her journal. She actually had detailed that she wanted to rob Paul Quant on, I believe, Christmas Day, but she couldn't because I think he had some people over.
The other things that were found in the car that were important was a key that was later identified to be from the locks on Mr. Quant's house before he changed them.
She actually was the mastermind. Her cousin Austin, he was just the brute force. He was just the enforcer. That's all he was.
Mr. Paul was doing real bad. I mean, real bad. We don't know if he's gonna make it or not. You know. So.
We'd see in the interview room Miranda get emotional, but I don't think she regretted anything that she did to Paul Quant. She got caught, and that's what she regrets.
Miranda Martin and Austin Jones were charged with attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit home invasion robbery, and conspiracy to commit burglary of an occupied dwelling. If Miranda Martin had not confessed, we would have had a significant circumstantial case against her. There was literally nothing to connect her to the scene itself. Would that connection have been good enough to sustain a conviction? I don't know. Probably not.
The next day, we found out both of them were in custody. So, and there was a comfort in that, knowing that we now know who did it.
I felt positive and good about solving the crime, but the overwhelming feeling was them getting some justice.
The hospital was great. They allowed everybody that wanted to be there to
We had
be
a
there.
room full of people.
The doctor came in and started turning off machines and pulling tubes. We all said our goodbyes. I'd like to think he could hear us, but I don't know that that's the case. And he slipped away. There's a certain comfort in knowing that as long as we can talk about him, as long as he's in our hearts and in our minds, his legacy lives on. It's his family. That's his legacy.
For more about Criminal Confessions, go to oxygen.com.